In this particular lesson, we're going to talk about the podcast autoresponder. Now, what is a podcast autoresponder? Now that you know what a podcast is, how do we combine it into an autoresponder? Well, if you're familiar with autoresponders for email, that is, you go to a website and you submit your email and your name, and then you get put on an autoresponder. That means every X amount of days, every certain amount of days, you get an automated email sent out to you. Now, how can you do the same thing with a podcast? So let's go ahead and create a podcast from scratch, and we'll call it the podcast autoresponder. And the idea here is that every subscriber gets the same experience no matter when they subscribe, just like an email autoresponder. We'll leave this empty for now, and we'll call this the podcast autoresponder tutorial. This, by the way, lends itself great to a tutorial that you want to automate so people get at on a certain time of day, at a certain time of the after they subscribe, they get the podcast. So we're just going to leave it without a password and hit save. And we're going to bypass the iTunes option, or we can fill it in here. Look at the iTunes tutorial that we did before in iTunes options, what the purpose of this is. So if you want this to be in the iTunes directory and submit it to the public store for marketing purposes, you want to fill this in here. So please look out for the iTunes tutorial and iTunes store on how to submit a podcast. But for now, we'll skip this and go to manage episode. Now in this case, we're not going to use conference calls. We're going to use media from our library. So we will say this is an audio episode, and we'll call this the introduction. Now you can imagine this will be introduction to any of your classes or your concepts or your groups or whatever it is. And again, once we're in here, we can put the 9 secrets or what have you to happiness. Always a good introduction, 9 secrets to happiness. So I'm going to choose this option right here, X days after subscription, X amount of days after subscription. I'll put that as soon as they subscribe, I want them to have this particular audio session. So I'm going to go down to my audios, and I'm going to pick a session right here, and I'm going to scroll down and hit save. Now looking in iTunes, if you subscribe to this and I am a subscriber, there's not going to be any episode in here because I just subscribed to it and it hasn't been a day yet. So if I hit the update podcast, I don't get any particular updates here. So it's going to take a day before I get any kind of updates. Now that we're back in here, we're going to add the second episode, and we hit add episode here, hit OK, and we're going to say, the second one is going to be a PDF, and that's going to be a manual. So we'll just put a manual in here, and we want that to be available a day after they subscribe. So put 1 day here, and we'll just pick a PDF. And here's a PDF that we can use, and I hit save. Let's just add one more and say after 4 days they're going to get a video. So after 4 days they get a video, we add an episode, and let's just call this a video, and we'll call this lessons and instructions. And we'll have the same description. Scroll down and we say we want this to be available 3 days after someone subscribes. I go around, I pick up a video from my library that I have previously loaded. If you missed that lesson, go look for the library, manage media library. And I'm just going to pick this one right here. Hit save. So now this is all going to go out in the next couple of days as an autoresponder. And the key really here is that every subscriber gets the same experience no matter when they subscribe. So that's the whole idea behind an autoresponder. So you can control the experience as a marketer. So again, if I go into iTunes and I hit update, there's not going to be anything there except for the first one, which we had 0 delays on it. So the 0 delay was the audio introduction. So because there's no delay on that, it goes out right away. So let's just fast forward and pretend like a few days went by, what that would look like. Now let's pretend that a day went by, and now the PDF is going to come out. As soon as I update my podcast that I open up to iTunes, I updated this here, and now a day went by and my PDF manual comes out. So now I can view my PDF manual. So the first thing was an audio file, if I play that. And the second thing is a PDF manual. So there you have it. Now let's pretend 3 days went by. I think you get the picture by now. Now we're assuming 3 days went by, and again the user opens up iTunes or updates podcast, and here's the video, lessons and instructions. 3 days later, it'll take a little bit for it to download. Once downloaded, the user can simply double click and view the video within iTunes. This is another demo I recorded on iTunes, so this might be confusing to you right now. So you can view this on your iPod, your iTouch, or simply your iTunes. And that's how we create autoresponders with a podcast.